Chapter 1. The street he walked was black, with the deserted footprints left from other men. This night was cold and rainy, with a smell of burning bushes in the air. The rain was unusually wet, and stuck to his skin like gum to hair. Near him, newspapers flowed down the street, causing the scene of a desert with its tumbleweeds. Large, red, brick-faced apartments crowded both sides of the street. Each apartment had dozens of windows. Some were coated with the blood-stained marks of people who had contracted the virus. Others were broken with shards of glass sticking out from their corners. Infection had spread through the blocks of the city like a plague. People were forced to stay indoors, eating and drinking only what they had. The disease itself ate through the infected people's skin, exposing their insides to other infections and eventually causing permanent blindness. Soon after, people lost their sense of stability, while heart failure quickly concluded the disease. On this night, he was out on the streets. He walked not to spread the deadly infection, nor to gain it. Nor was he out to defy the government, either. No, he walked along to prove what he was, and that was lucky. On any normal day, this man was very lively, though today he was in all gray, raggedy clothes. No life appeared in his face. His walk was a slow-paced movement. The man had black hair, contrasting his fair complexion. His eyes were a dull blue, and his muscles were fairly formed. He represented a freedom, an independence from the government's constricting hand. Slowly he turned his gaze to the full moon overhead, wondering what would become of him. In the mist, he watched as a pigeon flew overhead. A light shone behind the man. Slowly sneaking up on the man, it was trying to scare him with its brute force. The light came closer and closer, and the man knew who it was and what it wanted from him. He was out during a continuous 24-hour curfew. The government's wrath would all too soon show itself to the man, proving his luck had run out for the moment. The light soon faded into cold, hard machinery. The vehicle pulled alongside the man and slowly rolled down the window, mindful of the rain. There were 2 men inside. The man walking didn't stop to look at them, but he could see what they looked like without having to turn his head. The driver of the vehicle was a taller Caucasian with blonde hair and brown eyes. However, the passenger was the supposed purer of the two, as he was also Caucasian with blonde hair, but had blue eyes. The driver spoke. "Do you realize you were out during the curfew?" The man stopped and looked at the driver, who braked to keep up with the man. Yes. The 2 men turned to stare at each other for a moment before answering the man. "We must take you to the base for these crimes." The man took in a deep breath and responded slowly. "Do as you must." He stood straight up, looking clearly into the rain, awaiting his own personal exile. The driver put the military vehicle into park and opened the door with the other man. Cautiously, the 2 of them walked to him and placed him into metal handcuffs. These were separated by a solid metal bridge that kept his arms from moving. The man made no attempt to resist, figuring either way he was going to die, so he might as well see what was at the bottom of the rabbit hole. The 2 army men packed him in the back, chaining him to a seat with rough, rusted chains that could be used to contain an elephant. This was his own cold, blackened escape from the surrounding world. He sat and waited until he heard the 2 doors close, the signal that they were leaving the soul-rotting city. The engine shifted gears and took them off down the last lonely road. The journey was bumpy and rough while he sat upon the hard seat. His head dripped with rainwater from his outside jaunt with his own demons. He knew that once he arrived to the outside destination, his life was going to change even more rapidly than it had from the infectious life inside the city from which he came. He glanced out the back of the vehicle and noticed the gates of the city passing behind him. The monstrous structures were 35 feet tall and ran all around the community, surrounding all 4 square miles of the area. This wall was the solution to the spreading disease that threatened the country. This was the end for sure, the only idea the government had to keep the depressed country from breaking into a state of chaos. The gates held in truth and kept out the lies that the government had fed the outer world. A few moments later, the gates closed, and a new object replaced it in view. This was a white plastic sheet that contained men in masks and white aprons, attempting to block out the chance to catch the disease. In a second's notice, the vehicle stopped, and the 2 army men opened the 2 doors, then shut them. They appeared at the back of the vehicle bed, staring at the man. The man watched as the 2 army men lunged effortlessly into the bed and walked cautiously over to him. They released the locks binding him. He was then pushed out the end of the truck, falling to the ground, slamming his head violently upon it. He looked around, squinting from the searing pain. Blood accumulated quickly from his temple. A group of white-coated individuals surrounded the man. They took him and dragged him to his feet, only to stare at him for a moment. The man in front looked at the man and spoke. "Take this one to the test facility and check his blood to make sure he's on the list." A black bag was then pulled over his face, blocking the world from view.